It's Only Sport with Martin Devlin on the platform. Brought to you by One New Zealand. Let's get connected.
It's time. It's episode 99 now for us of the generation. That means Maxwell Smart. It also means it's party like it was 1999. Mark Watson joining me. He is back from the Paralympics. We'll talk about that. The All Blacks, the White Ferns, are heading to the T20 World Cup and have made no changes for the team that just got dicked 0-8 in England. We can talk about the Ranfurly Shield.
Apologise to me!
First and foremost, mate, as an elderly gentleman, jet lag. You've flown back from Paris. How bad?
Yeah, I was just saying to Lachlan, actually, these airlines can talk it up all they want in terms of their service and we're the world's best airline and the different awards that they do get. The reality is, unless you fly in business class, which I don't, you're just basically confined, aren't you, in this aluminium tube in an upright chair with about 6 inches in front of you. You're trying to sleep for 17 hours, and that's just the second leg of the trip home. So, yeah, there's nothing fun about it, mate. There is nothing fun about it. But look, yeah, I mean, it is what it is. That's, I guess, the thing of living in New Zealand, isn't it? We are a long way away from the rest of the world.
And, you know, the older you get, look, I've got a terrible jet lag coming back from France. I tend not to get it flying there because you're kind of excited, you're full of adrenaline, you jump off the plane, you're ready to go, but on the way back, mate, you got that inevitability of, oh, God, here we go, and you know. And yeah, I just go into cow mode, man. I'm number 73 in the herd. Just point me in the direction. And you know, I don't talk to anyone. I can't think about anything. I just sit there and I'm just a zombie.
Yeah, no, look, I've sort of put my wife and family I give them that little bit of a heads up. Look, guys, I'm going to be pretty tired for the next 2 to 3 days. I might be a little on edge. I might be a little bit grumpy, but I've learnt to. And, you know, you also come down off these big events where you're full of adrenaline and excitement and, you know, you can crash a little bit at times and you can feel a little bit flat. So I guess a little bit, you know, I've learnt some things from being an athlete all those years ago where you just sort of learn to pick up on habits and you start to realise, you know, that this is how it's going to affect me individually, and you sort of put some little strategies in place to avoid sort of putting those around you under too much stress.
When you come back quickly, what are the first things that you notice? I always notice there's no people, where are the cars, but the air is really clean.
Yeah, I mean, you can always smell the fragrances when you arrive in New Zealand. You can always smell the freshness. What you still notice, though, is the orange cones. Just still does. But you do. Like, I've been in Paris, you know, I was up in China in July. I see cities that are under huge stress in terms of infrastructure like any other city. You know, I was very close. I was very close to Notre Dame Cathedral. You know, I'd run up there every day and there's a lot going on around there, but I just didn't see the orange cones. I didn't see the orange cones too when it came to just crowd control for people getting in and out of stadiums. And, you know, it's an absolute epidemic here. It's just, yeah, it's a blight on the city.
Somebody's made an industry out of it, mate. Scaffolding and orange cones. So the Paralympics, a couple of quick questions. I want to know, what was your best moment? What was your best story? What moved you the most?
Oh, look, I'll still say this. I think that the thing that just impressed me the most was just the crowds that turned up and got behind this event. Look, I went to Parc de France. It was only a couple of train stops from where we were staying on Friday night. I'd done the cycling all day and I had the night off. And, you know, I'm not, Marty, you might actually be able to confirm the capacity of that stadium, but it is large. And I would say it was 90% full. I mentioned last week the atmosphere in the basketball arena every night was 12,000 sellout. Now, I think it was just the crowds that moved me the most, how people just embraced these athletes. I mean, the triathlon's always something really special to watch with the different categories, watching people having to swim in the Seine River over 750 metres who have no use of their lower limbs or legs, and, you know, having to try and somehow keep their bodies upright in a technique-based sport, and then being lifted out of the water and put onto their hand cycles, and, you know, then they come off and then they've got to be lifted into their wheelchairs for the wheelchair side of it, which is the equivalent to the run. And then you watch the athletes with maybe a lesser degree of impairment, and they're coming out of transition and they're putting on their, you know, their various sort of prosthetics and the engineering around that. Yeah, and then just the stories really around, I think Rory Mead, even a New Zealand cyclist, you know, used to be an international motocross bike rider, and then clearly an accident puts him in a wheelchair, and yeah, but through the Paralympic movement have found some purpose and have found that drive and have found that sense of self-worth and that sovereignty that I guess they felt they would never get back after their accident. And I think that's probably the story of it. But I think the one thing you notice, Martin, when you're commentating at that level, once the race gets underway, you don't even notice a lot of the time the actual impairments. You're just calling a race.
Yeah.
And you pretty quickly don't see that this guy here does have a prosthetic, or this particular person here doesn't have movement down one side. You're just seeing a race, and you're just talking about the race, and you're doing it like you did the road race at the Olympic Games in Tokyo. And there's this excitement, and there's the tactical side of it, and there's the technical side of it, and the countries and the people out on the roads, and and these, and I think that's the thing that I probably enjoyed the most and probably resonated with me the most. But also I think just the depth that we're seeing every 4 years. We've just got greater depth in the fields now. There's more and more athletes clearly who have been inspired by the generation 4 to take up a particular sport, and so there's greater depth of competition, and the margins for first through to fourth are becoming smaller and smaller.
Apologise to me!
All right, while you've been away, of course, we lost to South Africa again. I know you probably watched that, and you watched the first one, and it's fascinating to me that Mark Robinson, who a couple of years ago when the All Blacks lost to Ireland, remember, issued that incredible press statement, which was just at the time, blew everyone away, calling their performance unacceptable, and that's what led then to the real heat coming on Ian Foster before he went to Africa, and Mark Robinson was going to sack him over there and lost his bottle. Well, he did a big LinkedIn post, Mark, and I don't know whether you've read it. It's nauseating, mate, but it goes on, the whole thing's about I had drinks with this guy and socialised with this guy and talked with this guy and the proposed talks with this guy and then talked about the proposed talks with that guy. And then he congratulates the All Blacks and team and management for just a fantastic performance. And I'm sitting there reading this going, hang on, 2 years ago, you wanted the All Black coach's head on a plate, and now this is terrific that we've just lost these 2 test matches. Where are you with Scott Robertson? Is the honeymoon over now? Because, 3 losses in a year is unacceptable for any All Black side. I mean, I'm not saying at all, I'm not even suggesting for a second that we need a new coach or anything like that. But I just think, right, from here now, what I want to see is Razor, what you're bringing to the team. I want to see what you did for the Crusaders. I want to see you, and I want to see your influence from this point on.
Yeah, I mean, there's a smugness that goes around Jason Ryan, which just irks and irritates me. And I think he needs to get over himself. Just going back to, I think Matt Cooper was over there. And I've always had a good relationship with Matt. I do like him, another board member. I still just go back to that South Canterbury not being able to afford to fly up to Hawke's Bay for a Ranfurly Shield game. And yet we seem to have plenty of money for our executive to head up to San Diego to watch the Fiji game and rub shoulders. And here they are over in South Africa for a couple of weeks. And, you imagine the cost of what business flight airfares are and then accommodation and all the rest of it.
Shouting the media drinks, because that's what they did,
Yeah, and most of the provincial unions are really, really struggling to just keep their head above water. And so, look, I think Mark Robertson just needs to move on. The thing that just still amazes me, Martin, no one within New Zealand rugby even has suggested that possibly the game is in trouble. We've suggested it. Other media have picked up on it and suggested it, but they just still stand there and believe everything is still okay. And I just sit there and go, have you guys got your head so far in the trough you can no longer see the wood through the trees? I mean, the game's in a terrible, terrible state at the moment. Look, in regards to Scott Robertson, he's learning pretty quickly, isn't it, that this is not an easy job and that things are going to turn very quickly on him. I have just been so surprised by this conservative selections, just the fact that he's pretty much stuck with Ian Foster's team, that we still stick with the same players that just seem to have this habit of losing. And it continues. We still don't have a world-class midfield. I know everyone goes on about Geordie Barrett, but I just don't think he brings the physicality at second 5'8".
The back three is just a shambles at the moment, mate.
I think Chris Ratto and even Liam Napier in the Herald in the last couple of days I think have just reinforced what we've been saying in the prior weeks, that, we just need to go back to a baby Blacks feel. We need to just start bringing some of these other young players through, changing this up, maybe relying a little bit more on youthful exuberance, and sort of just, doing it Scott Robertson's way. I mean, that's why we wanted him picked, because we just thought he was going to do something different, and he's done nothing different. It's just the same old, same old. But, as I said, bringing Fletcher Newell off the bench, that's just not impact for me. I just can't understand that. I just can't understand why you've got a guy like Tossie there who is a rampaging bull, and you're not prepared to play him. Yet, somehow we just think we're going to turn it around. I'll keep going back to it. I still want to know how resting players through Super Rugby is a performance enhancer. I think part of the problem is I don't think our players play enough now. I think we're not as mentally tough as we once were, and I think part of that is because no longer the players have to think for themselves. There's no jeopardy anymore. There's no adversity. They're all making lots of money. Life's good. They've got high celebrity status in this country. And, we've even got a lot of media now who are not prepared to ask the hard questions. And then having Mark Robertson come out and saying he's proud of the team, well, all that does is just reinforce apathy.
Yeah, that's it.
And I think we're starting to get apathetic about the All Blacks losing.
Yeah,
we're starting to say it's okay to lose.
Exactly. You're exactly right. And I've been banging on about this for the last couple of days, that now we lose 3 test matches a year and, that's just okay.
It's okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
And it should never be okay.
As long as we win the World Cup, Martin, it's brutal.
Apologise to me!
It's Only Sport with Martin Devlin on the platform. Brought to you by One New Zealand. Let's get connected.